All right, thank you, everybody. I am going to call this special meeting to order. It is not Thursday, it's Wednesday, April 2nd. It is now 7:40. We are in the Nashua North Boardroom. This is our special BOE meeting. Miss Lampier, can you please do the roll call?
Sure. Can you say the time again, Jen? I'm sorry.
The time is 7:40, and that was difficult the first time, too.
Okay. So Miss Darling is not here. I am here. Miss Raymond? Here. Miss Bryn?
Here.
Mr. Claffey?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Miss Daniels-Williams?
Here.
Miss Giglio?
Here.
Miss Bishop?
Here.
Shrey is here. And Dr. Andrade, Mr. Posca, and Mr. Gray are here. Okay.
Okay. Dr. Scarpati will be back in a second.
Okay.
Okay.
We got to do this motion first.
Yeah, I was going to
Okay.
tee that up. Okay, so we actually do have one agenda item on this meeting outside of the budget information, so I will punt this over to Dr. Andrade. Oh, sorry.
You want to just read it?
Oh, so this is the resolution R25-137, changing the purpose of up to $2.2 million of unexpended bond proceeds from the middle school building project to the school building security vestibule safety improvement project.
So moved.
Thank you. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Prinn. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, can we just explain what this is from the JSSBC and also that it's from a bond, like we can't just absorb it into a different account?
Right.
Just, I can explain that if someone else doesn't want to.
Oh, you go.
Okay, so this is money that was left over from the middle school project. We had bonded, actually, we didn't use up all of the bond, and then we didn't end up bonding, I think.
$4 million.
$4 million. So at the end of the day, at the end of all of the middle school renovations, there were $2.2 million left over. We can't spend that money in our regular operating budget. It's left over on a bond. So what we are doing with this motion is we're asking the Board of Aldermen to transfer the $2.2 million that's left from that project into the security vestibules project, which, as I don't know if everyone knows, but for the last 8 years, Nashua has been adding security vestibules to all of our schools, which create, if anybody's gone to the schools, you have to get buzzed in, and there's like an entryway, and it prevents people from getting into the actual building where our kids are in case of an active shooter, and they're really great. So we only have 2 schools left, 2 or 3?
2.
2 schools left out of our 18 schools. And so we'd like to take this $2.2 million that's left and move it over into the security vestibules project so that we can start planning for those remaining schools. Mm-hmm. So it's been a lot of work on all the schools.
Yes. There was a huge conversation about it with proposed, what the proposed changes are going to look like at the last JSSBC meeting. So if anybody wants to refer to that. Mr. Shaw?
At Nashua South, the buzzers have been working so well that they want to add one more to the back entrance.
Can't sneak out anymore.
Yeah, I vote no on that. No one's coming in the back.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just saying that's what they told me.
All right, so seeing no other discussion about this, right? Not seeing any other discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of approving resolution R25-137, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, so in regards to the budget conversation tonight, I will open the floor up for discussion. Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I just want to talk until my voice gives out, and then, if everyone doesn't mind, if we don't mind going around the circle, I just wanted to respond to a couple of things. First of all, I really appreciate how many people came out tonight. As you can all hear, I'm not feeling so great, but I thought it was really important to be here, and I'm really encouraged to see people from the Alderman's board here as well, because I
Yes.
think it's good for everyone to hear everything together. A couple of things that, I took a lot of notes. A couple of things that came up regarding transportation. We are not the only district that had this significant increase in transportation. The only one I know of that didn't was Londonderry and Manchester. Manchester owns their own buses, sort of. They use their city buses. And Londonderry's in the middle of a 10-year contract. So when their 10-year contract is up, they're going to have the same problem. Nashua privatized the buses back in like the 90s. We did know that this was coming. We did inform the mayor. We sent out an RFP, which is a request for bids. But while there are at least 3 transportation companies operating in southern New Hampshire, First Student is the only one who responded to our request for bids because they're the only one that has a fleet that is sufficient size to meet the needs of our district. The other 2 bus companies that operate in this area simply don't have enough buses. And so if they had responded, maybe we could have cobbled together something. But as we know from this year, busing, when there are big changes, is not great. So I do think it's worth a discussion moving forward about, does it make sense to one day buy a fleet and hire mechanics and hire, people to maintain it. But I agree with the person who commented saying that that's a big project for the school district to take on. And it would be a big ask for the city to take on, 10 million or 20 million. I don't even know how much a bus fleet would cost. So I don't think that that's a solution for this summer. The other thing I wanted to mention was 2 things on money and rankings. Mr. Teboom correctly pointed out that Nashua is the 24th best school district in the state when it comes to the rankings of the school districts and our test scores. We spend about $18,000 per student, which is significantly less than the average of $21,000 per student in the state. Some school districts spend up to $44,000 per student. We're in the bottom 25 out of about 100 school districts. So we're consistently testing in the top 25, and we're spending in the bottom 25. So I think that Nashua taxpayers are getting a pretty good return on their investment in our school system. And I think our teachers are doing a pretty good job. And we can argue about test scores and whether or not they're good enough all day, but New Hampshire continues to have the 4th best school system, public school system in the country. I don't know why the people at the state are copying, Arizona and places that are in the low 40s, but here we are. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out is that Nashua is not the only district dealing with not just the transportation costs, but the increased special education costs and these big cuts or big budget crises. Jaffrey just canceled all of their sports. Manchester was asked to cut almost $10 million this week. Most school districts are looking at between $2 and $5 million cuts. And we're pretty big, so that's less impactful to us than it is to a smaller school district. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to talk about was salaries. In Nashua, our teachers and our paras are paid less than their counterparts everywhere, unless you've been here for 25 years. Then it's sort of competitive, but not really. Our administrators are paid significantly less than our neighbors. Our administrative team is fantastic, but they make less than Hollis Brookline, who have a quarter of the students in us. They make less than Merrimack, who have less than half of the students that we have. So we are not in any way top heavy. Again, Nashua's taxpayers are getting excellent value for their money, and we are incredibly lucky and privileged to have the team that we have for the amount that we can afford to pay them. So that's really it. I'm going to drink some water now.
Okay. I see Mr. Claffey's light on, so I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Is it too early to make a motion, if I'd like to make a motion?
You can make a motion.
We've got a lot of papers. I'm probably going to need a wordsmith, Ms. Lampier, if you could just I have a motion to send the Board of Aldermen, and I don't know if it's the superintendent's budget or the school, what's the proper title, that's all.
It
Board of
just,
Education budget is fine.
Okay, fine.
it just says here, they left a blank spot for the amount of money and the percentage. It's a recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2026 budget in the amount of,
I have in an amount not to exceed, and this motion was 3.5% above the current budget. 3.75, excuse me, 3.75. And my wife will tell you, I worked on this all day, and
you said 3.75?
no, I'm changing it because of what, some of the comments. And she'll tell you I cried at home, so I'm not an actor. If you post on Facebook that I'm faking this, she's there. She's in the corner. You can ask her. And I was rehearsing, and there was nobody there except her.
Mr. Gray, can we
Yeah,
see
she is
the
hiding, but
numbers?
she'll tell you I cried.
Can we see the numbers?
No, let me finish my motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought,
What numbers? Okay, so I'm going to finish. Did you ask for the floor? Did you ask Jen to speak?
Nope, it's still Mr. Claffey's.
Thank
it's
you.
Mr. Claffey's floor.
you were engaging
We
the
can respond.
audience, so I took the opportunity to ask.
No,
Ms.
I'm
Gray for
referring
the
to my
number.
wife in my comments. I'm sorry, you're right, I was. But did you ask for the floor?
Okay, continue on, Mr. Claffey.
So I had 3.75%. And I'd like to change it to 4%, which isn't going to please everybody. And we'll see if the aldermen back up what they promised here. I hope you're right. I hope you stand by what you said. So is that clear? 4%, not to exceed the current budget by 4%. Is it too soon to make that motion? Because
No,
I'm
you can
certainly,
make
if
that-
somebody wants to offer a different number, but if I have the Roberts Rules rights to do that, I'd like to do that right now and have a discussion about that.
As long as you have a second, we have the opportunity to
I'll
discuss.
second it for discussion.
Ms. Raymond is seconding. Now the floor opens up for discussion.
Can I speak to my motion?
Yes, you absolutely can. I'm sorry, that is what you're supposed to do.
Before I start, I'd like to commend almost every speaker for respecting the 3-minute rule or 3-minute time limit. It was obvious that almost every one of you invested a lot of thought and preparation before you came up to that podium. So thank you for that, and thank you for respecting the limit. I haven't prepared any written comments like this since I ran, I don't know, 3.5 years ago. When I practiced with my wife, we made a lot of cuts because I felt an obligation to keep it to 3 minutes. That's the limit. I'm on the board, maybe I should get some slack. And when I was a teacher and I gave students an oral report, I would say to them, you have 10 minutes, practice at home, make revisions, and make sure it's under 10 minutes. And I told them also that when you come here in person in our classroom, you're going to be nervous and it's going to be like 9.5. Don't worry. Unfortunately, I know I'm not going to make it because this isn't easy. So luckily, I start with a little bit of vitriol. I have 3 points. First, I'm very upset by the villainization of our mayor and someone imply that a cap suggests he doesn't care about teachers. He's dedicated, is anybody timing me? Because I'm fine with that.
No, there's
Well, I
no,
want to respect it. 17 years of his life to being our mayor, 2 different eras. And anyone who taught here during the 80s and early 90s, during the mayor's first terms, as I did, would never question his commitment to education. During his first term, Nashua was named the #1 city in the country by Money Magazine, the first time it ranked cities nationally. That was in 1987. I was hired to teach here 2 years later at Nashua High School. And like it was yesterday, I remember the guy who hired me, department head, telling me that new teachers like myself were lucky because he had just secured a great contract. We did pretty well the first 3 years, then not so well. Those who taught when he left after 1992 remember this. Our salaries were often frozen when negotiations stalled. These lost wages would never be recouped. It's a pay freeze. 1 year it was 2 years. I looked for a job somewhere else. I'm glad I didn't get it. No mayors fought publicly to reward, retain, and recruit dedicated teachers the way Jim Donchis has. Many of you were working here just a few years ago when he took the unprecedented and courageous step coming in here to this very boardroom to personally advocate for you when you were working without a contract. You owe a debt of thanks to Mayor Donchis for your current contract, which isn't perfect. In fact, one of my close friends and former students left here because he's stuck in the middle of the quicksand of steps. I hope you fix that. And the top step, in fact, almost makes me regret retiring early. Not that much, but. So let's not use this current crisis to scapegoat or grandstand. I'm not going to break Cory Booker's new record. Point number 2, some of you fail to appreciate the fiscal crisis we currently face. The mayor and superintendent clearly do. The ESSER spigot has been shut off. The GOP majority up in Concord and the new tenant in the governor's mansion have made it painfully obvious that vouchers and slashing the state budget are more important to them than public education. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Education is being dismantled, potentially jeopardizing Title I and other federally funded services. Given the many fiscal uncertainties on the horizon, we have an obligation to responsibly prepare for the future. Point number 3, demographic trends. Certainly smaller classes were needed to address the post-COVID social and emotional needs of our students. And since 2022, we've talked about this, the share of our ELL and special education students has increased over 20%. I'm really concerned, especially after hearing what's going on at Pennachuck, I'm really concerned about some of the class sizes at our middle schools where teachers have been asked to implement incredibly difficult changes. But the steady long-term decline in our total enrollment must be part of any serious budget conversation. In the past 3 years, we've seen a population decline of 4%. As BOE members, we were elected in a citywide election to make decisions that benefit our city's students, not specific neighborhoods. If you want to save teachers, stop procrastinating and start considering potential school closures. I'm sure that went over well. There are my closing thoughts, and this is where I'm probably going to go way over 3 minutes. I don't recognize a lot of faces. You guys are so young. But some of you had my kids, and I worked with you, and you know where I stand. You know where my heart is. I didn't run here for the money. We did get a raise. Oh, sorry, a little bit. It's not good money, but it's not worth it. Don't do it. When you retire, if you live in Nashua, don't do it. Ruined my retirement, but here I am. Luckily, I'm almost done. Know that I understand that we are talking about human beings. Human beings. Data is useful, but my respect and gratitude for your service matters more to me than any statistic. Early in my 32 years teaching high school social studies here, I was given the dreaded pink slip myself more than once. Later, as a head teacher, I saw the pain it caused. This was 2009. I hand-delivered a former student and teacher, wonderful student. I offered to give her the RF notice. They said, we're going to we'll cover her class because she's probably going to be upset. And she did. She left the school early in tears. I'm not in your shoes this moment. My wife said, don't pretend to understand what they're feeling. But I once was in your shoes. I think 3 times. In my tenure year, I was, anyway. And a lot of I was talking to one veteran. He said 3 times too. So we were there. Now, luckily, I won't be here on this board for the next budget. But I do think that 4% proposal will benefit you, and I really hope, and big reason why I think 4% is advantageous for you is you're in the middle of negotiations. And if you really want to recruit and retain our teachers, and I mean retain, because I know, like I said, you lost one of the best, you better have a contract that you can afford. You won't be talking about, I'm not going to diminish the numbers, forget it. This is the last thing I have to say. How much time am I at here? 10 minutes?
Yeah, there's no,
Well, I promise, and like I said, I practiced. Fiscal courage is required to ensure the future sustainability of a city I have called home for a long time. Thank you.
I just want to say that Mr. Laffey was my favorite social studies teacher when it was one Nashua. And
That was your only, wasn't that before the split?
yeah, it was the only one. But
Sorry, I didn't ask to be recognized.
I like that you continue to inspire me even in your retirement, so I appreciate that. Ms. Daniels-Williams?
So I would like to speak to the motion that is put before. I would like to require the information on what the numbers look like. I don't want to vote blind. And I would ask that we get the numbers so that we can see them, so that we can know exactly what we're voting for before the vote is, well, the vote has already been put to the table, but getting as much information as possible before we go around the circle.
So the 4%.
You can ask the administration for what they have.
Yes, Ms. DeGray said that she possibly would have the 4%, and you would have a couple other numbers for us today. So I was wondering if we could see those, because we didn't receive them. If it's not available, I would ask to hold the vote.
I do want to remind you, though, that we had a meeting on March 15th, and I said, get all of your questions to administration prior to the meeting where we deep dive into what we need to do so that we can responsibly look at our budget line item by line item, and they can come back with the appropriate time. I understand that they have the numbers right now and they've done it for us, but I requested you guys to get me and administration these questions a week ago. And you're coming in now, well, you came in Monday wanting to know 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and what 5 looks like. I asked you to get me that information a week ago, and asking our administration to put all of this together again with moments' notice while they still have to do all of their other work, I think is a little disrespectful. I am incredibly happy that our administration has done it, but I asked before to give them a timely lead on the questions that you were going to ask. I was very clear. I even scheduled out meetings extra to give you guys time to review what we had in front of us so you could get your questions to them.
Excuse me,
President
can I ask a quick
Bishop,
question?
I feel disrespected by you saying that, because at the end of the day, I don't know a week ago on the 15th or the week that you scheduled and changed all these budget meetings and everything else. I don't know what I'm going to ask until the information is presented. And Mr. Gray is the chief financial officer, and I think that that's what we asked them to do. So I don't think that I'm out of line
And they
at
did
all
it.
for asking that. Yes, I could have asked it on the 14th or the 13th or the 12th when you sent the email saying that there was going to be a Saturday thing, but I did not know those questions until they came up. And that's, I'm sorry, but that's what I think that the CFO should be able to do. Maybe not on the spot. If she didn't have it on the 15th, she should be able to have it.
So
So I thank you,
They have the numbers.
if I,
but that's the thing, and
They're going to answer your question, Ms. Daniels-Williams.
but I didn't feel like I should be reprimanded publicly for something that I didn't have preparation to
Hey,
prepare.
okay, well, they have the numbers for you.
so we have the
And I
questions.
think that that's a lot of what this board has done, just like Mr. Claffey stood up here and he's putting it to a vote before we even have the information. I think that we should be well prepared.
Well, hold on.
This is a big deal, and this is lives and teachers on the line, but so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gray, for providing the information that you have.
I'll give you guys the floor now, thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? Do we have these numbers already on one of the slideshows, 4%, something like that? 4%.
So
Excuse me.
there's some information in the slideshow from the 15th. It says, I don't know, close to the end.
I don't want to belabor this point.
But it's not all the
Again,
details.
I will just hand the floor over to the people who know the answers to this, and I thank you for putting it together for us at short notice.
Yeah, so we're more than happy to go over it. And again, I think this is, over the last 24 hours, 48 hours, we were able to crunch some numbers. We had some of those details. And again, we can talk about with that, like the question for Monday night, what would it, if we restored all the positions, that was your question on Monday night, what would that percentage be? So we're prepared to answer that question. And then we're also, again, as kind of going through the numbers on where some of those reductions would be based on enrollment, right? So we're more than happy to discuss that as well. So if we asked for, if all the positions were restored from the other night, the 47.75 positions, it's a 1.5, we would be making a request. If nothing else was restored, it's a 4.75% increase if those 47 positions were restored. So that's the number if there was no cuts. It's a 4.75% increase. And I said it Monday night, and I'll caution us as well, is that, Mr. Hoffman asked what were some of those positions, right? So if I just look at the high school, we have a declining enrollment at the high school, and working with the high school administration, some of these eliminations are based on we have the students put in for their schedules for next year. It's low subscriptions. And so we're able, with some of these eliminations, to offer the students' requests with some reductions. And again, I'm truly sorry that I called out the Latin teacher the other day. I mean, haven't had this conversation. I don't want him we're talking about a position in public, right? So we haven't had a conversation. So, but there are, in the high school, I'll just pick on North, there's 8 positions. A 0.25 in one section, a 0.25 in another section, in another area, a 0.25, a 0.5, another 0.5, and then in some of the core areas like math, English, or a science teacher, we're able to combine sections to eliminate. So we're still able to offer sections. So I just want to caution us, if we restore those 8 positions, they may or may not be needed. What I would encourage us to get to that 4.75, if we restore the 1.5 million, as we heard today, is how do we reinvest that money? Where we hear from Penachuk or elementary teachers, might we hire more social workers, wraparound services, right? So we might have the same number of FTEs, but they may be repurposed. So I just want to caution the board that we come up with a number that if the enrollment is not there, a subscription at a high school course, we shouldn't be running it. However, I would really look like to have that money to reinvest in support services. We've talked about the conversation right now where we're requesting 8 new ELL teachers. We know we need more. So I wouldn't say we need X teacher at the high school with low subscription. I would love to trade that position for another ELL teacher, another social worker, a family engagement coordinator. Those, what's that? A math interventionist, right? So that would, if we look at restoring positions, so when we say no cuts, I would love to maintain the same amount of FTEs with the repurposing. But if we looked at restoring the 47.7 positions, and still eliminating everything else, it's a 4.75% increase to the budget.
Ms. Raymond?
Oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question on that. So the 4.75 means no elimination of total number of teachers. It includes the 8 ELL teachers. Does it take out, and I apologize because I was very ill on Monday, does it take out the, some of the technology upgrades and some of the other stuff
Yeah,
that
social studies textbooks.
that I think are important, but not as important as people teaching? Okay. And then, okay, thank you.
So I want to, thank you. So I want to say thank you for giving us that number and explaining it, that the 4.75 would keep the teachers, even though we knew, we talked about it on Monday, that the positions could change around. But we have another meeting tomorrow, right? So I have another request. What does it look like not to change it around in that way? Because hearing from the teachers tonight, they said that that's awful to be given a pink slip and then saying, but pick from these 3 jobs. So, I mean, I don't know how we feel about it as a board. And, you know, with the 2 teachers here on the board, maybe they can speak to that. But I just feel like yesterday, on Monday, we said that the positions could change. We understand that. But being able to keep the positions that we have now, and we're still down social workers, family engagement, and 37 positions that Mr. Baus talked to us on the last meeting. And they're including psychologists and all that kind of stuff. What guarantees us to get those positions with the new money? Dr. Andre.
I'm just processing your question. That's,
Can
you let him answer first? I'm sorry.
I'm talking to the president. I'm not talking to you. I'm asking the president to speak.
I'm gonna
And you.
I'm gonna wait for
you
Dr. Andre to finish.
need to ask as well. You can't just yell at me because I'm asking to speak for 1 second. He needs time to process. Can I ask one question? It's simple. Do we have to meet tomorrow?
No,
That's it. So that needs to be clarified.
yeah, we don't have to come back tomorrow, but the
If we're
floor
good
is
with it,
yours.
I'd be happy to step in. So let's take a step back. Tension, I understand. We have done a ton of due diligence from that meeting back on the 15th, right? To give several different options to this board out of the gate. If we didn't eliminate anything, what would that overall percentage be? That is exactly why we had a working session on that Saturday, was to run some scenarios. I believe your question is, and clarify me if I'm incorrect, please. You asked us on Monday, what would the overall percentage be if we went ahead and restored those 47.75 positions? Again, those are positions that we as the administration came forward to say, it's not just teachers, it's not just paraeducators, it is secretaries, it is administration staff, it is lunch monitors, it is TIAs, it is crossing guards, et cetera. It is total population of this district. I believe your question was, what would the overall percentage be if we did absolutely nothing and included those positions? So Dr. Andre just said it is 4.75% that we would need to go to the Board of Aldermen to ask for a percentage increase, which would put roughly 1.6 million back into the positions that we told you on Monday night. Our suggestion would be to go ahead and reduce and eliminate those.
Ms. Daniels-Williams, follow up.
Thank you for cleaning that up for me. I would like to make a motion for the 4.75 to run alongside of Mr. Claffey's.
We have to finish up first motions that are on the table. You can't put out second motions until the first one's been voted on. You can call the vote if you want to.
Or she could make
You
an
can ask Mr.
amendment.
Claffey to amend it, but
I can't run them consecutively? That's not Robert's rules?
No, you can make a motion to amend it.
Well, I make a motion to
If you have a
amend.
second, but
I make a motion to table the 4% and amend it with the 4.75% as the standing motion.
What you want to do is you want to make a motion to amend Mr. Claffey's motion, which is to send the budget off to the Board of Aldermen at a 4% increase. You want to amend it to 4.75.
I want to table the 4% altogether.
You can't table it because it's a motion that's already out there, so we have to vote on it.
So you can, so what you're trying to do is change it to 4.75. So just amend it to 4.75 if that's what you want to do. And then someone has to second that.
Can I get a second for the amendment of 4.75?
She can make the motion to amend it, but she needs a second.
She just needs someone to second it.
Okay, so it sounds like we don't have a second for your motion,
I'm just,
which goes back to the original motion of the 4%. Ms. Gilio?
Yeah, I'm a little confused, and I do have a question, because once a motion is made and seconded, don't we have time to talk about it?
We are talking, unless somebody calls the vote or if they
Right,
want to
so
amend
I
the
would like to
motion.
talk about it.
You
Can
can, we can, she didn't get a second for her amendment, so we're back to the
Oh,
original
but we're
motion.
still back to the original motion,
Yep.
and I do have questions about that.
Ms.
so-
Gilio, and then Ms. Lampier, and then Mr. Shaw.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know if thankfully, the administration put together these figures and came up with the 4.75%. Do we have anything else like the packet we got on the 15th that supports that, like what the class sizes would look like if we did not? And I understand that we may need to cut a specific high school position, and maybe we could get an additional social worker, and I don't have issues with that. So my question is, first of all, you know, is there anything else that you want to offer us tonight before we vote, or vote on the 4% increase or the other percent increase? And secondly, I just wanted to say that I was the one on Monday night that asked if we could look at a 4%, what that would look like. And having heard from 2 aldermen tonight, I'm very heartened that we don't necessarily have to stick to the 4%. So I think I wanted to see if there's any more information about the 4%, what we would have, what we would lose, and then see how that goes.
So just in general, at the elementary level, there was, in our projected class size, there was a couple of schools that we were eliminating an elementary teacher. So say at Fairgrounds Elementary School, I'll just pick on that one. There, with the elimination of a position in K, they would go from 5 to 4, but the projection is 13 students in a class.
This is with 4%.
That's, no, right, so if we restore back to 4%, Fairgrounds Elementary K class would be at a 13 students as opposed to 19 students. So that would be a restoration, I think at, sorry, blanking on, like Maine Dunstable, I think there was a reduction in a class. Again, that we would look at, it would go from, you know, the 19, 20 back to like the 14 in the class. So that would be if we restored those 5 positions at the elementary. That's where we would see some reduction or reduction in class size at the elementary. Again, at the high school, restoring those 12 positions, there might be sections that we don't need that we have now are, I'll just make up, you know, a different, right? Like we'll have a teacher with 1 or 2 students in that class if we restore that high school position. So I would just be cautious of that. And then we would restore an administrator back into the budget, some secretaries, and there was a reduction in instructional paras, but there's a need in district-wide paras.
Thank you.
That would be the restoration.
Okay, thank you. That was what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
And then with that aspect, again, there's a little room on, again, for having conversations around social studies textbooks that were eliminated from the budget, or again, we've also moved money from special revenue funds to cover special education that Mr. Gray said on Monday night that we need to be cautious on creating a structural deficit. So again, we could restore the 1.5 million, but again, I think we also need to look at the overall infrastructure and again, if we were able to get all the positions, are they the same positions, or if there's no enrollment in that class, but could we use that FTE for something else?
Understood, thank you.
Ms. Lampier, then Mr. Shaw.
My question was about if we go with 4%, do you have a number of total positions that will be lost?
Can you give us 30 seconds? We'll just run it for you.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Of course.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
It would still be around 28 positions.
28?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a number, say, for 4.5?
Give us 30 seconds.
Okay.
So I think just to put, I guess, some clarity around the data, this might be easier to think about it. So for every 0.25% that we are going up, it is roughly $327,000 more. When we budget, if a position roughly costs $50,000 from a salary standpoint, from a rough math standpoint, and I can give you specifics, it would be about 6 additional positions, right? So if you use 50,000 divided by, call it 327,000, you're talking roughly an additional 6 positions, depending on which side you're sliding that
So that's
percentage.
for a quarter percentage?
Say that again, sorry.
That's for a quarter percentage?
That is
about
correct.
6?
Yep.
Okay.
And if you go a 0.5 percentage, because I think that's probably where you're going next, it's going to be 650,000. So again, if you use those round numbers, a 0.5 percentage is roughly 650,000. Divide that by about 50,000. That's your number of positions. I think to Dr. Andre's point, I think we have the opportunity as a district, especially where we heard from some folks tonight, that it sounds to me like we still have some needs at the level that we probably are not providing some support staff, right? I'm going to be honest, I was pretty shocked to hear that there's hall monitors at Pennachuck that we promised, and I'm not seeing them on my side. So I am more than happy to dig into that to make sure that our staff is supported.
I feel the same way sometimes when people come here and speak, and I say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I had no idea. And the more that people come and talk to us, the more that we know about what's going on in the school district. So just thank you guys all for coming tonight. Okay, so that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shaw, sorry.
Thank you. I was waiting to be recognized. So right now, I'm shaking. This is so crazy to me. I have never in my life seen so many people gathered together for a certain cause, and I want to thank all of you guys for coming. First, I'd like to take my time to apologize for my former comments on the 3.5% budget increase. I didn't know the entire information, and I definitely didn't hear from all of you guys here. I was looking at the numbers, not the reality. Needs have definitely gone up, and that's clear from Miss Amanda McGuire. She really spoke out to me, and everyone who spoke at Pennachuck. I think I learned a lot. Even though our school district's population has dropped significantly 10 years ago, the diversity and makeup of our schools has increased, and that constitutes the need for different positions. Mr. Claffey, I have much respect for you, and you know that, but I don't think right now is the time to save 4% because we don't know exactly how many special educators we need. We don't know exactly how many paraeducators we need. We don't know how many hall monitors we need. We don't know how many teachers would want to be repurposed. We don't know how many are qualified to be repurposed. We don't know any of that. And Ms. Bishop, I'm sorry for not having these questions prepared in advance on March 15th when you asked. I'm still new.
Well, for Monday, not March 15th,
Oh, Monday, yeah.
31st.
But I do support Ms. Daniels-Williams' motion, and I asked Ms. Lampier if I could second it. I guess I can't. But, but I support you. I support you in asking for those questions, such as that 4.75. That was really enlightening. And I would now like to ask my good colleague, Ms. DeGrade, to talk about all the other, hey, I'm an adult too, thank you. My good colleague, sorry, friend? That seemed weird. I always call you Mrs. and Misters. But anyways, I would like to ask Ms. DeGrade to speak on all the other percentages and different opportunities that you've prepared for us, if there are any.
So I'll just kind of give one data point, I guess. When we first sat and had the meeting back a few weeks back, I think it was Saturday, March 15th, we presented at the start of that meeting, if we did absolutely nothing, except for gave the increases to the collective bargaining units that are already settled, gave some type of an estimate where we will go ahead and settle the 4 contracts that we are aware that are sitting on the table today. If we include that bus contract, at that point, it was 22%. We've done some downgrading, right, and moved some money over to special revenue. We've gone ahead and said we'd really like to be equitable across the district and have these touch panels in every single elementary school and the social studies textbooks. What would that overall percentage be? What I presented to the board back then was a 6.68% increase.
Mr. Claffey?
I want to apologize for I didn't realize how loud my colleague reaction was, so please, and I don't want to, it was hypocritical of me to say something out loud when I've asked people out here to listen. I thought we saw, don't we have a pretty good idea how many special education, let's just like you to address what Mr. Shaw said about uncertainty.
Yeah, so we know how many special educators we need. We know how many students have IEPs. We know how many district-wide paras we need. So we have those numbers. Sometimes the issue is filling the positions. So we have it budgeted for, like, in our in this year's budget on those positions. The one area that we need more is, and we know like numbers on that, is ELL teachers. So we have our special educators, we know the number of paraeducators. So we do have those numbers and we budgeted for those. The one that's not in the budget, again, that we know next year will be in the budget is ELL teachers, and that's been a growing demand.
Go ahead, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. So I believe everyone knows all of us on the board are very pro-teacher. You can see a lot of us are repping blue. I have a blue belt on. But what I'm saying is, I think repurposing from a top level is good. You have teachers that you don't want to lose, but you have different purposes for these teachers. However, that's one side of things. Now, when you look at the other side of things, it's you're handing teachers a pink slip and asking them to choose between different jobs. That's bad. So what I'd like to ask my fellow members on the board is, how does repurposing usually work? And are the teachers usually, like, does it usually work properly? I don't know much about it. That's why I'm asking.
I mean, I would say that that's not really the purview of the board.
Yeah.
Right? One of the questions that I had asked on that Saturday, the 15th, was, I don't want to think that we're canceling basket weaving and find out that we've lost culinary, right? So that type of huge programming stuff is the board's purview, but it's the purview of the building administrators and the other administrators to match up what the student needs are and what the staffing is to meet those needs. It's not our, and we really, I don't think, maybe Mr. Claffey, but and probably Ms. Prin a little bit, but like I certainly don't have the knowledge base to say what our students need. Like I just don't know. I don't know, what they need for special education services. One of the reasons that I had asked Dr. Andre to let us know about what classes students are picking at the high schools versus what ones aren't as popular was because I was curious about that, right? Do we have classes where only 2 students are signed up, or do we have some classes that we don't run at all because we don't have students for? I think that those are just interesting things, and if you look at like a college level, if there aren't students, they don't run the class that semester. I don't really understand how the principals make those decisions at the high school level, and I don't want us to be in a position where we're saying, oh, we don't like Latin, so we're not going to have that anymore. However, because I don't think the board should be picking on individual teachers. However, I also don't want to be surprised that we've cut, like Jaffrey did, they cut all of their athletics. I don't know, I'm really struggling with this because I'm at the state level, and so I'm seeing every federal cut that's happening being exacerbated by our state budget. So like the federal cut library and museum funding. So in our infinite wisdom at the State House, they were like, oh, let's also cut library and arts funding. So I don't know what the aldermen are gonna have to deal with in the coming months for other departments. And so I want to advocate for what our students need, but I also, as a taxpayer, am worried about the fact that library and public health are just seeing these millions and millions of dollars of cuts, and I don't know how the aldermen are gonna do that. So I don't know if the best idea for us is to send the aldermen and say, we don't wanna cut anything, give us 6%, or is it better for us to say, we're also taxpayers and community members, and we all have to exist together, so should we send the aldermen something more modest and try and show that we're team players. I don't know what the answer to that is. In years past, we've done it both ways. I don't really envy the aldermen their job in the coming months. It's going to be terrible.
Yeah, and I think you have to keep in mind that no matter what we ask for, there's a finite bucket that they're working out of. So if they give us what we need, it's coming out of somewhere else. And if we want libraries, if we want plowed sidewalks, if we want transit system, we're gonna lose that stuff by not compromising over here. And that's why this conversation is so hard to have, because it's complex, it's multifaceted.
Yeah, and that's why I asked on the 15th about schools, because I like people more than I like buildings. But I also know that we're going to be in this exact same position next year because the state has invested right now about $100 million into increasing vouchers and not any extra money into increasing public school funding.
Right.
So I'm worried about what that's going to do to our enrollment and then our revenues next year.
Yeah.
So I would rather personally keep in our back pocket bigger cuts like that until next year when we have the facilities study and we have time to do redistricting. But I don't believe that Nashua is going to be immune from the problems that all the other districts in the state are having.
No, and if you let me just go for 1 second. I do not think that this is going to be the only year that we're looking at this. I think when we pulled up the percentage increases for the last 10 years, they did not historically meet what we needed as a district, and we've been cutting. The school district has never been able to be like, oh, we're flush with cash and we don't need to make any choices. I think next year is going to be harder. And I think we need to be responsible with the decision that we're making today, recognizing that today bleeds into tomorrow, and tomorrow we're going to have to deal with consequences again too. So there is no good, we're not looking at any good horizon right now, maybe in 4 years. But we don't have a lot of control right now. Mr. Claffey?
I teach after school a couple days a week and in the morning down in Lexington, which I think the average property value down there is 1.8 million. Average house, 1.8 million. Maybe the richest town in one of the richest towns in the city. They have a spending freeze right now on their schools. So I don't think, somebody said everybody's spending more money. That's not true. This is Lexington, Mass. They have a budget freeze. I know we're not Lexington. We have far, far greater needs. However, this isn't a local this isn't just a Nashua problem. And you got to face it. And it's painful. As far as revisiting the pink slip experience, I certainly don't want to do that. So don't ask me to go back. What happens to how was it? Well, can I bring down a teacher who we talked about or not? Is that, no? Because I'd sure like to hear his memory. I will tell you that the people that I remember who got pink slipped, they took a job at the middle schools in my department rather than lose a job. That's what they did.
And that'll obviously be a personal choice. I think, sorry.
No job? Or
Right.
doing the hardest job maybe I'm sorry, elementary, maybe the hardest. Sorry.
Okay. Do I see any other comment, Mr. Shea?
Yeah, sorry. I think no one wants to repurpose or redistrict, and we've clearly, as Mr. Claffey said, we don't want to do this. But the thing is, our students have dropped 2,000, while the number of ELL students has increased 1,000, and the number of special educators have increased 1,000. Again, the students are dropping, the number of students are dropping, but the needs of the students are changing. That's why I'm saying, how are we going to protect these jobs without asking for more money to hire special and para and English language learning teachers? That's what I'm saying. I don't see any other solution other than repurposing. If anyone does have a solution, please enlighten me.
Mr. Johnson?
2 questions. So obviously one of the big things that people have brought up is the transportation cost is definitely playing a huge role in all of this. One of the things we discussed on the 15th was about the charter schools and if there was a way to consolidate or that they get picked up from one spot. I don't know if there was any advancement in those ideas.
We're meeting with them next week or the week after. So there's a meeting there. And again, with transportation, we actually had several meetings. We actually looked for a 1-year contract to see, some of the issues is, the contract, July 1st, that's a new year. To have no transportation on July 1st is
Sure.
not a good situation.
Not legal.
What's that?
It's not legal.
Right. So we asked for a 1-year contract so that we could look at different options. They came back with a 35% increase. So we've worked with them and negotiated, again, as Mr. Gray said, their first initial was a 22% increase. We asked them to work some of the numbers. It's down to the 18% increase. We're working with the charter schools. We'll be on, again, are there different solutions on changing bell times, again, which we might have to modify our bell times to change the bus schedules so that we can eliminate some of the runs or to consolidate. So we're looking at still taking 4 buses off the road and then working with the charter schools to lower that cost. We have that meeting in 2 weeks. We did have a conversation on what would it take to bring transportation in-house, and that's a really high number. That would be bonding, and that would take a number of years to get ready. We couldn't pull that off in 3 months. So we've met with the mayor and a couple other, looking at options on how do we look at that too. So we've been kicking over some rocks to look at different ways, but transportation, as much as we say about for a student, they have sharpened their pencil a little bit. I mean, it's still steep, but hopefully will be better for it. And so I think there's still some savings there, but not to the tune of 1.9 million.
Sure. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Gilio?
Yeah, we're still just discussing, right? So I can bring up anything I want right now.
We're discussing the motion on the table.
Okay, well, so, yeah, the motion on the table. And I just want to thank Mr. Gray and Dr. Andrade and everyone else who's been working on this. I think when I came to the meeting on Saturday, the 15th, I was not prepared for what was presented, and it was pretty horrifying to all of us, okay? I didn't even know what questions to ask after that. It was just like, this is not us. This is not our school district. So I'm guilty of not having asked them to do things in a timely manner, okay? That being said, Mr. Gray just explained that if we wanted to do leave everything alone, we would look for a 6.68% increase, which we're team players. We have great respect for the police, the fire department, the public library, the public health department. We don't want to hog all the money. However, a 4.75%, which Dr. Andrade said would keep us from eliminating positions, even if we repurpose some of them, does make a lot of sense to me. And I'm looking at, from that meeting on the 15th, in this school year, FY25, we asked for 4.49%, and the alderman gave it to us. The year before, we asked for 3.01%. I'm not sure why we asked for so little, but they gave it to us, okay? In FY 2023, we asked for 4.66%, and they generously gave us 4.56%. I don't see anything wrong with asking for 4.75%. I certainly wouldn't want to request 6.89%.
I see.
And that's kind of just how I'm feeling about all of this right now. And I don't really want to ask our people to go back and come up with a whole packet like the wonderful packet you came up with on the 15th, because that was a ton of work. But I think if there's some way we could look at a 4.75%, it may be something that will be kind of in the middle of us being people who are trying to take all of the money away from the city, and then the people who are trying to protect our students. And that's, I'm very good at saying what I believe. I'm not so good at making motions.
That's fine. Mr. Shaw had a comment, and then Mr. Claffey.
Yeah, real quick. After the Board of Aldermen approves something, if we don't end up using all the money, do we give them money back?
Yep.
Yes, anything
Yes.
that we have left over at the end of June goes back to the aldermen to do what they do with it. Sometimes they use it to lower the tax rate, sometimes they move it to something else. Frequently, they use it to pay for the parts that they pay for, because I don't know if you remember, but Mr. Smith said that they help with buying vehicles for us. They pay for all of the retirement and health insurance and dental insurance for the school district employees. So a lot of times, whatever we have left goes back into paying for those things.
Yep, that's correct. It is a budget that does not roll over year over year. So like a savings account that most folks hopefully have, it doesn't roll over year. So it's almost like you use it or lose it.
You have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Yeah, awesome. I'm getting text messages from my friends as this rolls in. They're watching online. So I'm speaking on behalf of both South and North because Shake's not here. But when I say that, if we use the 4.75% to pay for all the teachers, keep them for a year, then I know Dr. Andrade and Mr. Grade, you're looking at cutting costs in other areas like transportation. I think both high schools really would appreciate having the 4.75 right now and then cutting as much as we can in other areas to then give money back to the city.
Can I
Yes, please.
just respond? So we absolutely, as I've shared throughout this process, and I feel like I've been nothing but transparent with this board, is we absolutely can ask for it, right? I think Shay posed the question on Monday, Well, what if the Board of Aldermen doesn't approve what we put in front of them? Then there's going to be decisions on our side that we're going to have to make, right? With that being said, I truly feel as a district, this budget that is in front of everybody now, we have gone ahead and almost exhausted most of our special revenue funds and possibly even some of our trust funds. So as I've said several times, I would not encourage us to continue to do this year over year. We will be in a structural deficit if we continue to put $1.5 million, $2 million, $2.5 million towards special revenue year over year, and the revenue is not coming in.
Mr. Claffey?
Mr. Gray, you've been questioning on a number. Let me ask Dr. Hunt. I've asked this before. ESSER money, $50 million over 3 years, is that close?
Close to
Give or take a few billions. So 50 million divided by 3 years, that's about $16 million per year. That's about 10% of the budget. $16 million a year. You're 10% of the budget. So don't look at the last 3 years and say, well, I'm not going to look at the last 3 years and say, oh, we got this and we got this and we can expect this. I know the aldermen have said, oh, we're going to give it to you. But you cannot ignore that windfall.
Ms. Daniels-Williams?
I'm going to go out on a ledge again and ask for the amendment for 4.75% because now we've had the opportunity to talk about it. We understand it a little bit more. We've heard the numbers. We've heard what we will be able to gain and keep. And it just seems like ask for the amount. If it has to be amended, it will be amended at BOA.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, discussion on the motion to amend the original to 4.75? Okay, so it looks like we're going to a vote. There's nobody, do you want to, you've already spoken to your motion. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I just want to say that I want to speak to the board, that we were represented to support the community, that we have to be able to ask for the things that we need instead of coming year after year and saying, these are the things that we didn't get because we didn't ask. And I feel like in the last 3 years, just supporting the motion, in the last 3 years, we've gotten what we've asked for, but this is crucial. At this time, in this community, in this political climate, in everything, it is crucial that we don't cut jobs here in Nashua. So that's why I'm asking for the 4.75%. So thank you.
Mr. Shaw and then Mr. Claffey.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Gray, you were talking about the 4.75 and how that would bring structural deficit. Can you go more in depth about the negative effects of getting a 4.75?
Sure, I want to be clear. I did not say if we went to 4.75%, we would create a structural deficit. What I referred to as a structural deficit is we have our operating budget. We have what's considered special revenue. We did a deep dive on this back on that Saturday meeting. And we also have trust funds. And then we have another bucket of what is called federal grant funding. You usually want to go ahead and utilize your operating budget first with a parallel to your federal funds that we get year over year. Now, as we heard from Ms. Raymond, and we've seen, I'm sure, in the news, there is no guarantee based off of what we've received year over year related to our federal funds. My comment related to a structural deficit is so we could provide as little impact to the overall operating budget this year for fiscal year 26, when I say this year. We are going ahead and moving roughly $1.2 million out of contract services and out-of-district tuition, which is money that would sit in our operating budget. We are moving that over to special revenue that we have to utilize specifically to special education. If we continue to do that year over year, we will be in a structural deficit.
And you're saying with the 4.75, we are taking that money and moving it over?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That clears some things up. Sorry, I'm sure if I took Mr. Claffey's or do you teach macroeconomics, I would have understood that.
Sorry.
Mr. Claffey,
No, I retired 4 years ago.
you can't petition his class. Go follow-up question?
Yeah, on Mr. Claffey. Yeah, no, I know you were retired. I'm saying if I was born 4 years earlier, I would have taken your class and then I would have understood it. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Well, there's a wonderful person at South teaching it right now, and I would be perfectly fine if my own children had him rather than me.
I've taken macro.
Okay.
Oh.
Mr. Claffey, and then Ms. Lampier had her hand up, and then Ms. Gilio.
I'm asking, since my my motion's been amended, and I tried to make this clear during my remarks in support of this amendment. It's short-sighted to base a decision here on saving jobs for 1 year. I care, and I know the mayor cares, about the long-run sustainability of this city. I have no reason to recommend cuts. I'm done. And if I was a board member who really cared and I'm going to be here next year for this budget, good luck next March, next budget season, because you're putting us in a position, you're putting the NTU in a position where you're going to have a hard time.
Ms. Lampier, then Ms. Gilio. And your motion is still on the table. We have to vote on the 4.75. If that goes past, then we go back to the original motion and vote again. Or if it doesn't pass, we go back to your 4. So it's not gone. Mr. Claffey?
Well, I am definitely not voting for 4.75, just so you know that, because it's not in the long-term interest of the city. It's not just about 20, 40 teachers. It's about the firefighters and the policemen. And you guys who are with your special interest politics in here, it doesn't serve the long run. I'd rather trust somebody who's devoted a lot of his adult life making this a world club, making this a nationally recognized city, than sitting here saying we're going to save 7 jobs at the expense of at the expense of our entire city. That's short-sighted.
Ms. Lampier, then Ms. Gilio.
I just wanted to point out again, since Mr. Gray has brought up contract services and special education, that we as a district have been unable to hire special education teachers, speech and language pathologists, OT, paras, and we are paying 3 times more for contracted service out of the district. And this is not something that is sustainable. And this is something that the teachers union really needs to deal with. It's not something that we as a board can deal with, but you need to think about paying people, like changing the structure of your contract so that you can get people into this district to teach these kids, and so we can pay them a fair wage instead of paying 3 times as much and not having money for our kids.
So I would just caution about talking about negotiation
I'm
contracts.
sorry, I
when
know
we're
you
in
guys are
open
negotiating.
negotiations.
Please ignore everything I
So
said.
we really cannot, we cannot be negotiating contracts up here. I appreciate the sentiments, but there are a couple times I have to make hard stops on things, and that's one of them. Ms. Gilio?
I have a question just for Mr. Gray, because I'm a little confused about something. So at the packet that I have in front of me from the 15th of March, there is a slide that you talked about the special revenue accounts. And at that point, when we were just asking, we were going to try to go with the mayor's request of 3%, were we using any of that money from the out-of-district or the contract services just to meet the 3% increase?
Yep, so I was trying to see what slide you were truly on, so I
Okay, and I don't know
apologize.
which
So when we shared all the details on that Saturday working session, I gave everybody the balance in special revenue as of June 30th of 2024. Usually what happens.
All right, I see it, yes.
So what happens again for maybe the public and the folks in the audience is special revenue, when we go ahead and set it up year over year, your revenue and your expenses, sorry, I'm gonna get very math and nerdy for a second. Your revenue and your expenses need to net to zero. So year over year, when we budget, if we go ahead and say out of district tuition, we're gonna bring in $1 million for some of our programs that the sending school districts are sending their kiddos here to Nashua. The expense side of that also has to then net $1 million. So I talked a little bit on that Saturday meeting of what's considered your fund balance. So operating budget, you can't roll that money over. Special revenue, we can roll that money over year. But again, special revenue, the way it's set up, you can only utilize it for that specific category.
Okay, and so my other question is, looking at either a 4% or a 4.75%, that would mean dipping into the special revenues to a greater degree than if we were going to go with the mayor's requested 3%? It wouldn't.
The same. We can't afford to take out any more.
Okay, so it's the same whether we vote for the 4.75 or the 3%, which we've already kind of dismissed.
And
Okay, okay, I have some financial things just are a little bit above me.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
And I said at the other meeting, I am extremely cautious about digging into what I consider our savings accounts to pay for things. We have no idea what next year is going to look like. This is not the time to be emptying our coffers before we even know what major budget cuts we're going to be having from the federal level. I would rather not even pull out the 1.2 this year because I'm so nervous about next year, but you guys are the financial gurus, not me. So if you're giving us this information, then what do I know?
So I
No, you don't want to pull it out either.
Well, I don't, but I think it's a fine balance, right? And listen, I've talked to quite a few folks, like, this isn't an easy conversation for anybody, right? And I know I'm the new person coming in, and I'm just trying to be transparent and say, here is where we are as a school district this year. I am comfortable with us pulling $1.2 million out of that special revenue, special education next year. To Ms. Lanfear's point, the couple things that are unclear to us as a district, and it has been for a very long time, is what can we not control? We can't control contract services. We can't control the cost year over year. We can't go ahead and control out-of-district tuition. So if we have 2 or 3 kids that either move in, or we can't go ahead and support their educational needs here in district, we need to send them out of district. With that being said, we cannot control that. So year over year, we need to absolutely be cautious. And that's why I'm saying if we continue to pull 1.2 million, whatever $1 million it is out of those special revenue accounts, we will be in a structural deficit.
Okay, Mr. Johnson?
Just to wrap it all up, we definitely need to, Mr. Claffey's point about next year and stuff, we don't know what's going to happen. We're in the wilderness on that. We do need to look at redistricting. We discussed it at the beginning of the school year. We know there's the survey of the schools going on to see what needs to be done to keep them maintained. So we definitely need to take a deep look at redistricting and get that ball rolling. So not leaving people, oh, now you're going to this school, now you're going to that school. So we need to redistrict at the elementary level and the middle school level to balance that out, because obviously Pennachuck is overwhelmed, and that was not our plan, but that is what we've seen. And so, and again, redistricting has to be at every level, so we have to really take a look at that. Also, I would like to us to be able to talk to some of the middle school teachers more because they've had a lot put on them this past year. And I'd really like to hear from more of them on, what to do and what we need to do to give them the proper support going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Claffey?
I just want an answer from Ms. Raymond if she can give it, and that is, no, this is based on your position in the legislature. I don't know that we're in the wilderness. I think we know that if there's a wilderness, we know we're not going to have a lot of warm clothes to wear. I think we know that. I think we might freeze to death, even though we can't say whether it has trees or not. Is that fair, given what the state's doing right now?
I mean, the state is in over an $800 million deficit, so that's where it is. The governor thought it was 500 million. It's closer to 880 million, and every time the feds cut something, it gets bigger.
And they haven't taken into account the YDC lawsuit payout yet either.
No, they have not included the $75 million a year that they should be including for that. I've been ill, so I have not been to all of the budget meetings. I have been watching them on my computer. The vote is on Thursday, or I forget. I think Thursday next week, on the 10th, and then it will go to the Senate. I'm just feeling very, yes, pessimistic is a good word, and very confidently so about funding for public schools.
Yeah.
There'll be a small per pupil increase, but it won't be a lot. They did say that they are not going to cut catastrophic special education aid, which originally had been on the chopping block.
But they're changing the definitions of catastrophic special ed.
Yes, but they're changing the definitions, and it doesn't kick in until the school district has already paid $75,000 per student. And as we learned, I don't know, I'm very impacted by Mr. Gray's talking about our special revenue funds, because if we have one student with extraordinary needs, we know that these out-of-district placements are costing $500 a day on average. Some of them are much, much more than that. And we have to pay it. It's the right thing to do. I don't know. I'm just really nervous. So for me personally, as a taxpayer and a community member, I'm nervous about 4.75. It makes me very uncomfortable. I also don't want to cut. I don't know if we are doing our due diligence if we just put it all in the laps of the aldermen and say, you guys figure it out and get back to us.
Yeah, I just want to make eye contact with them right now. Were you expecting this when you came here tonight, this level of discussion? Yeah, good.
So,
Mr. Claffey?
A question for Ms. Raymond. I mean,
oh God.
no, I said publicly how much admiration I had for you when you navigated us through COVID at home with your cat. And you're in the legislature, and I'm going to put you on the spot. You can refuse the answer. But when you came here tonight, was there a cap number in your head?
So in my brain, I was thinking 4 to 4.5 as an ask. I don't think we'll get it, but I thought that was kind of reasonable. I mean, the other state level part of it that I'm thinking about in my brain is that the legislature or the finance committee added to the budget document HB 675. So last year they passed a bill saying that you could vote as a community in the towns that aren't Nashua and Manchester to cap your own school district budget spending.
Yep.
And every single district that had it either tabled it or defeated it last month. So the legislature made a bill saying that everyone must cap their school district spending an average of the previous 5 years plus COLA, and that's been added to HB2. It will pass. It is a priority. I don't know how that will impact Nashua. So that makes me want to ask for the most we can ask for because it ups our percentage, but it also means that I don't know what that does to the taxpayer. And I don't know how much, I'm just looking at all of my neighbors who in my neighborhood, it's mostly retirees, and how much money they can be spending on their property taxes. Property taxes in New Hampshire have gone up on average 39% over the last 10 years. It's not sustainable. Nashua's done a really good job at keeping it lower than that, but I'm just, the whole thing is very, very stressful, and it makes me very uncomfortable to ask for a large number and then have the aldermen say, we can't afford everything that we need to do for the city. You guys are gonna have to make do. It feels like I'm passing the buck.
It does. I just want to speak to that. One of the things that I was chatting with other aldermen is if they magically find extra money in their budget, not only can they vote to decrease what they're going to give us, but they can vote to increase what they can give us. So they're sitting here, they're listening to us, they can see all of the turmoil that we're going through and asking. If some magical unicorn comes down with extra money and they go, you know what, we did find it, there's an extra 0.25% that we can wiggle over to Ed, we know that they're being responsible and asking us a responsible number, and we can give them other stuff. They don't have to, but they also don't have to cut it. But it's never just down in their vote. But I think we have probably exhausted the opinion part of this conversation, and I would ask for us to vote on Ms. Daniels-Williams' amendment to Mr. Claffey's original motion. So, Ms. Lampier, we haven't done this in a long time. I have to write all of these extra motions in.
Yes.
But would you mind doing the roll call?
Sure. Let me just turn the other page. All right, so,
On the motion to amend the original motion from 4.0 to 4.75.
so after this, we'll vote on,
Whatever the outcome of this vote is.
all right. Okay, so on the motion to amend the 4.0 to 4.75, first we have, Ms. Darling is not here, and I am a yes. So then, Ms. Raymond?
I'm a no.
Okay. Ms. Prin?
Unfortunately, I'm a no too.
Okay. Mr. Glaffey?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels-Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
And Ms. Bishop?
No.
Okay, so there's 8 of us here tonight, so that is a tie.
Mr. Shrey.
So
the rules of a
Robert's
tie?
rules say that a tie is a loss.
Okay.
To what?
There's
To
a loss.
the
Tie means-
amendment?
It means it fails.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A tie is a fail.
Okay, so it goes back to the 4.0.
Can I make an amendment to 4.7?
Yes?
I make an amendment to 4.7%.
I second that motion.
Another vote.
What's your number?
You said 4.7?
I want to speak to that. I could get to 4.5. I'm really struggling as a balancing it.
Okay, so do we have a second for that?
I second it.
All right.
So I also don't want to just, this isn't the Price is Right. So if this one fails, let's just go back to the 4 and then work up from there.
You know what?
I mean, you can do what you want. You can continue making
So
motions,
I'm
but
going to make a decision based on the fact that it's 9:07 and I need to take my medication. I'll second the 4.7.
Ms. Daniels-Williams already
He
did.
already did.
You already did. Okay, good.
Okay, we have to go.
All right, so Ms. Darling is not here. I am yes. Ms. Raymond?
Fine, yes.
Okay, Ms. Prin?
Yes.
Mr. Claffey?
As Paula Johnson was fond of saying, I know I'm going to lose, but I'm no.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
I'm sorry, it was
But you
Ms.
called me
Daniels-Williams
out of order.
first.
It's-
Ms.
Yes.
Daniels Williams? Yes. And Ms.
Do I get to
Gilio?
vote again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and Ms. Bishop?
No.
Okay. All right, so that is a yes.
No, it's not done yet. We have to go back and vote on the original, so now it reverts back.
So now
So we've amended the motion to say no, just hold on. The vote was to amend the motion, so now the amended motion is for 4.7.
Oh, okay.
and we
And we
need,
vote on that as the last one.
but we also need, because Ms. Lampier said the original motion included the dollar amount as well, so we need someone to do the math.
To do what?
The dollar amount on the 4.7.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna vote on recommendation to approve the fiscal year.
Just, yep, at a 4.7. You have a ceremonial vote. Yeah, we need the number. So at a 4.7% increase, that brings our overall budget request to, drum roll, please. Are you ready to write it down?
Yeah.
So the overall budget at a 4.7 would be 137,220,888.54. And I only read it that way so she could write it down. So 137 million. And that would give us roughly a $6.1 million increase from prior year's budget is a 4.70.
Okay, so it is $137,220,888.54, a 4.7% increase over the fiscal year 2025 budget, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Does anybody have any comments on the newest motion?
I have an off-topic comment.
Yes, Ms. Prin?
It's Paraeducators Appreciation Day.
Mr. Shaw, you had a statement?
Use what we can and give the rest back.
All right, you ready for me to call them? Okay, so, all right, so Ms. Darling's not here. I'm a yes. Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Prin?
Yes.
Mr. Claffey?
Nope.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
No.
Okay, so that is 6-2, and our budget request will be 4.7% increase.
Okay. Well, there's nothing else on the agenda tonight.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Gilio, thank you, Ms. Daniels Williams. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 It is 9:12.